This happened just a few weeks ago. I'm 32, and I work as a freelance graphic designer in my studio apartment. I had just gone through a breakup, so I decided to dive into a new project on a rainy night. The rain was hammering against the windows, and I felt cozy in my dimly lit space. I thought it was perfect for focusing on my work. But I've been haunted by the events since then. As I sat at my desk, focusing on my computer, I suddenly heard a thumping sound on my front door. I thought it was the wind or maybe my neighbor bringing in groceries. I tried to ignore it and went back to designing. But the thumping returned, this time paired with soft knocks. I felt uneasy, and my heart picked up speed. Curiosity got the better of me, so I stood up and squinted through the peephole. There was just darkness outside. Maybe it was nothing, I told myself. I shrugged it off and sat back down. The rain got heavier, and I noticed shadows flitting by my window. They moved fast, disappearing as quickly as they appeared. A chill crawled down my spine. I tried to shake it off but couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Then I heard whispers. It seemed to come from the empty apartment above me. I thought perhaps someone had moved in. The wind made the building shake, and the sound seemed amplified. I strained to listen, wondering if they were talking about me or something. I felt chills as I stared at the ceiling, feeling cold under the voice's weight. I grabbed a flashlight. My heart raced as I decided to check the apartment above. I climbed the stairs slowly, doubt gnawing at my mind. I knocked on the door at the top. No response. Just silence. I felt foolish for even being up there, but the whispers wouldn't leave me alone. When I finally turned to head back down, a soft knock echoed behind me. I froze. It was faint, but I could hear it clearly. I glanced over my shoulder, but there was no one there. My heart began to drum louder. I wanted to believe it was just my imagination, yet I felt a presence lurking in the shadows. When I reached my floor, I closed the door quickly. That moment felt like relief, but it didn't last long. I began to walk to my desk, but then I heard it. A voice, soft and low, whispered, "Let me in." I turned so fast my heart raced, but the space was empty. I felt a chill cover me, and I knew I wasn't alone, even in my own home. The rain continued tapping against the windows. I sat down at my desk, fully aware of every creak and sound around me. Despite being inside my cozy apartment, it felt like I was the intruder here, trapped in shadows and whispers that made me question if I truly was alone on that stormy night. I barely slept that night. Every little sound sent my heart racing. The rain turned into a relentless downpour, each drop beating like a drum. By morning, exhaustion gnawed at me, but I forced myself to start my day. I had deadlines to meet, and I couldn't let fear dictate my life. I needed to focus on my designs. I brewed a cup of coffee and sat down at my desk. As I sipped, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The walls felt too close, the shadows too alive. I told myself to push through, but the unnerving thoughts crept back in. What if there was someone in that empty apartment? What if they were waiting for me to let my guard down? I decided to step outside. I needed to clear my head. The air was thick, heavy with moisture, and the streets were slick with rain. I found myself wandering aimlessly, almost hoping to bump into someone who could distract me. I finally stopped at a cafe, ordering something strong to wake me up. As I waited, I noticed a couple seated near the window, laughing and sharing stories. I envied their normalcy. Back home, I tried to return to work. My mind raced, filled with lingering doubts and questions. The sunlight faded quickly, and the familiar sounds returned. I heard the soft whispers again, this time more distinct. They weren't coming from the apartment above but seemed to swirl around me, invading my space. I paused, heart pounding. I couldn't ignore it any longer. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, I rummaged through my desk for my flashlight. My instincts screamed that something wasn't right. I switched it on and crept toward the door to the staircase again. I needed to know if someone had truly moved in next door. I stepped into the dimly lit stairwell, the beam of my flashlight flickering against the walls. As I neared the apartment above, I noticed the door was slightly ajar. Anxiety surged through me. I compelled myself to call out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" Silence. I pushed the door open just a crack, heart racing. The faintest scent of something rotten wafted toward me. I hesitated, then took a deep breath and stepped inside. The apartment was dark, the air stale. What I found next made my stomach churn. The space was empty, but on the floor lay a scrap of paper, crumpled and torn. I picked it up, and my breath caught in my throat. It was a drawing, crudely scrawled but undeniably familiar, my own design. Confusion swept over me. Who had been in my apartment? Suddenly, I heard the soft knock again, this time sounding from behind me. I turned quickly, the flashlight illuminating nothing but shadow. A cold breeze rushed past me, and the door slammed shut with a loud bang. Panic set in as I realized I was trapped. Just then, in the suffocating silence, I heard a voice behind me whispering, "You shouldn't have come here." I spun around, flashlight raised, but found myself face to face with nothing. My heart raced uncontrollably as the whispers escalated into a chorus echoing off the walls. I stumbled back toward the door, my only thought being escape. But when I reached for the handle, it wouldn't turn. That's when I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. My heart dropped as the cold hand lingered for just a moment, then vanished. I spun around, breathing heavily, and for an instant, I thought I caught a glimpse of a shadow darting away, but it was gone before I could focus on it. The silence pressed heavily against me, and the eerie whispers began again, echoing off the slick, damp walls. I backed away from the door, trying to control my breathing. Panic surged through my veins, urging me to find an exit. The flashlight flickered, casting unsettling shapes that danced around the room. I turned it off, hoping for a moment of clarity in the darkness. It only deepened the shadows, and all I could hear were those whispers growing louder and more chaotic. Tailspinning into desperation, I decided to search the apartment. I had to find something, anything that could explain what was happening. The furniture was sparse, just a few pieces scattered as if someone had moved out in a hurry. I picked my way through the gloom, using the flashlight sparingly, its weak light struggling against the enveloping darkness. The bathroom door was ajar. I pushed it open slowly, and a wave of mildew hit me. The light from my flashlight glinted off the mirror, reflecting a face that was pale and wide-eyed. I was startled by my own image, but I shook it off and scanned the room. The shower curtain was drawn, and I felt a compulsion to rip it open, to confront whatever lay behind it. I willed my hand to move but then heard an unmistakable click sound from the living room. My body froze. I shifted my weight, glancing toward the source of the sound. The door to the stairwell had opened slightly, no longer pressing against the frame. It was a chance. I had to get out. I bolted across the apartment, heart hammering, thoughts racing. The whispers became frantic, almost pleading. "Stay with us," they hissed. I reached the door and pushed it wide. The hallway was still, but my instincts screamed that I wasn't alone. I stepped out, glancing over my shoulder one last time. The apartment was as dark and empty as ever, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was right behind me. I rushed down the stairs, my feet landing loudly against the metal steps. I rushed to the front door, fumbling with the lock. The rain had intensified outside, becoming a constant, pounding rhythm. Just as I turned the key, I heard it again, a voice whispering, "You can't leave." My breath hitched. Adrenaline coursed through me as I flung the door open, bursting into the storm. The rain lashed at my face and body, soaking me in seconds. I didn't look back. The chill of the night air mixed with fear, only pushing me faster into the street. But then I saw it. A figure standing under the dim light of a street lamp across the way, cloaked in shadows. It watched me, unmoving, the outlines so familiar yet somehow haunting. My heart raced. I had to know who it was. I took a step forward, my instincts battling with dread. The figure tilted its head, a faint glimmer of recognition in its stance. That's when a shock of realization hit me. It was me. The echoes of their sinister whispers circled back, "You shouldn't have come here." I stood frozen, staring at the figure that mirrored my own posture. It felt like staring into a dark mirror, my reflection pulling me in with a silent urgency. "What is happening?" I whispered, and the figure mimicked my voice, mouth moving soundlessly. A wave of nausea washed over me. I turned to flee, but my feet were rooted to the slick pavement. "You can't escape," it echoed as I felt a chill prickle down my spine. I tore my gaze away from the figure and sprinted down the street, drenched by rain and fear. My thoughts raced faster than my legs, plotting my way out of this nightmare. Just as I neared the corner, I heard footsteps behind me. I glanced back, but there was nothing at first. Then the shadow was there again, closer. I had to pick up the pace. My heart thundered, not only from exertion but from the terrifying thought of the figure chasing me. I turned the corner and ran into an alley, hoping to find cover or a way to hide. The walls were stained and the ground littered with debris. I ducked behind a dumpster, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The rain drowned out all sound, just a relentless drumming. Peeking out, I saw headlights cutting through the rain. A car approached slowly, then stopped at the mouth of the alley. The driver's side window rolled down. I hurriedly waved my arms, desperate. "Help! Please!" The driver stared blankly, a look of confusion on their face. But before they could say anything, there was a loud crash. The darkness swirled around me, and just like that, the headlights were extinguished. Then I heard it. A soft rustling, echoing like whispers through the alley. "Stay with us," it hissed once more. I couldn't discern where it was coming from. My eyes darted around, searching for a way out. I moved deeper into the shadows, my pulse thrumming loudly in my ears. I thought of the apartment, of the strange hand, and the darkness that had gripped me there. What had followed me? Suddenly, I spotted an old fire escape ladder. It seemed to be my only chance. I sprinted toward it and managed to grip the cold rungs with trembling hands. I climbed quickly, heart racing, using every ounce of strength to pull myself up. The whispers intensified, swirling like wild winds. "You belong here," they called softly, almost tenderly. I kicked my legs upward, desperate to reach the roof before whatever was chasing me could catch up. I finally reached the top and pulled myself up onto the flat surface. My chest heaved as I surveyed the area, drenched in rain and fear. I was alone. I thought I could calm down, maybe even catch my breath. But then, I saw the figure standing at the edge of the roof, my reflection again, twisted and distorted, grinning darkly. "You can't escape your own darkness," it taunted. As panic surged once more, I heard loud footsteps below. Someone was coming up the ladder. I scanned the roof for an exit, but I was trapped. The whispers, the figure, the realization of who I was, they were closing in fast. Then everything went dark. I struggled to find my senses as I floated in blackness. My heart raced, pounding against my ribcage like a trapped animal. I blinked, searching for light, but all I felt was a cold emptiness that pressed down on all sides. Slowly, outlines began to emerge. I was back on the roof, but it felt warped. The sky above was a swirling mass of dark clouds, as if the rain itself was alive and hiding something sinister. I felt an eerie weight settle in my gut. The figure was gone, yet its taunting grin lingered in my mind. Instinct kicked in. I needed to get away. I scanned the roof for the door I'd seen earlier, but it was gone. Instead, I noticed a faint glow in the far corner. A single flickering light illuminated a narrow pathway, inviting and foreboding at once. I couldn't ignore it. I moved cautiously, my breath still shaky. Each step felt like wading through water. The rain continued to fall heavily, cloaking every sound with a thick veil. As I approached the light, I realized it was spilling from an open window. The frame was an eerie white against the shadows, and I felt an unexpected pull toward it. Curiosity won over caution. I approached the window, peering inside. It looked like my living room, yet so much more chaotic than I remembered. Furniture was overturned. My scattered belongings were strewn about as if someone had rifled through them in a panic. A dread knotted in my stomach. I stepped closer, hesitant to believe my own eyes. "Hello." I called out, my voice trembling. But only silence answered. A sudden rush of wind blew against me, sending a shiver down my spine. I was caught in a moment of indecision, but the feeling of being watched urged me forward. I had to know what was happening. As I stepped inside, the door creaked ominously behind me. The atmosphere shifted, thickening with an unsettling energy. I could still hear the rain outside, but now there was something else. A low murmur resonated around me, indistinct but menacing. "Find it," the whisper echoed, chilling me to the core. "It's waiting for you." My heart raced again, but this time with fear mixed with curiosity. The urge to uncover the hidden truth grew stronger. What was waiting for me? What had I become entangled in? I glanced around, searching for any sign of the figure or a clue to what had transpired. Then I noticed it, a small, glimmering object half hid beneath the wreckage of my coffee table. I reached down, my fingers brushing over the surface. It was a locket, the same one I had lost weeks ago. But it felt wrong in my hands, heavy with secrets I didn't remember. The moment I opened it, I gasped. Inside was an image of me, but it was unlike any I had seen. My reflection was older, wearied, trapped in a realm of despair. My breath caught in my throat. That wasn't all. Beneath the photo was a note, hastily scrawled, "You must choose. The darkness or the mirror." Before I could process the revelation, I felt a presence behind me. I turned slowly, dread pooling in my stomach as I faced the figure standing at the edge of the room, no longer just an echo of myself, but alive and staring deep into my soul. All I could think was that I was about to confront whatever horror was waiting for me. My entire body froze as the figure stood before me, its form shrouded in shadows. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my feet remained planted. The thing that eerily mirrored me had hollow eyes that seemed to flicker with sparks of light. It was horrifying to see myself rendered so unsettlingly. "What do you want?" I forced the words out, but they came out as a whisper. The figure just smirked, tilting its head slightly as if contemplating my question. The silence stretched thick and heavy. I glanced at the locket once more, then back to the figure. It stepped closer, gliding rather than walking. I could see its features better now, the pained lines around its mouth, the wildness in its hair. It felt like looking into a nightmare that refused to end. "Choose," it said. Its voice was a distorted version of my own, a strangled echo that haunted the air. "The darkness or the mirror? You know what each represents." Each word twisted inside me. The darkness, lurking outside in the storm. The mirror, reflecting what I had been running from. My thoughts raced. Had my past finally caught up with me? "Why do you look like me?" I dared to ask. "Because you've always been afraid." "Of me?" "Of what you see when you look too deep." It laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. "You thought you could escape, but here we are." I felt the room shift around me as if it shared the pulse of tension between us. My mind churned with memories I fought to repress. I turned my gaze, unwilling to meet its stare. I stumbled backward, fear surging through my veins. "You're not real." I yelled, desperation spilling from my lips. "Am I not?" "I am a part of you," it hissed. "Face it." Then I heard the soft buzzing sound, a voice that seemed to rise from the floor, both seductive and terrifying. It echoed the phrase, "Find it. It's waiting for you," drawing my attention away from the figure. In an instant, I remembered the letter. The choice I needed to make. I glanced around the room, searching for a sign of what to do next. The clawing need for clarity took root. Suddenly, the locket buzzed in my hand, vibrating heavily. I turned it over, my heart racing as I noticed another inscription on the back I hadn't seen before. To find the truth, follow the whispers. The figure laughed again, this time more chilling, as if it already knew what I would do next. My fingers trembled as I raised the locket closer, the light within it drawing me in. I could hear the murmur of voices, enticing me, entwining with the storm outside. Just then, the room darkened further. The buzzing intensified, drowning out my thoughts. My breath quickened as the shadows grew thicker, and everything went dim. Your choice is imminent, it taunted, elongating each syllable with delight. And then, just like that, the darkness surged, swallowing me whole, dragging me into the unknown. As confusion coursed through me, one thought echoed in my mind, there's more to this than I realized, and I was about to discover just how deep the rabbit hole went. The darkness enveloped me completely. My heart raced as I felt like I was falling, twisting through a never-ending void. I braced myself for the impact, expecting to hit something solid, but I kept drifting. The buzzing was relentless, filling my ears and pulling me deeper into whatever this was. When the world finally stopped spinning, I was no longer in my room. I opened my eyes to find myself standing in what looked like an old, dimly lit hallway. The walls were peeling, and the air was thick with an unsettling silence. It smelled of mildew and something sweet that made my stomach churn. I took a cautious step forward. My foot echoed against the floor, breaking the eerie stillness. The buzzing sound morphed into whispers, fragmented voices that seemed to call out from the shadows. They lured me deeper into the hall. Find it, they chanted, growing more intense. Find what you lost. I glanced back to where I had come from, but the darkness had closed in behind me, erasing any trace of the figure that had confronted me. Panic surged within me, and I pressed on, my mind racing. What was I looking for? As I continued down the hall, I noticed doors lining the walls. Each one was slightly ajar, and I felt a pull toward them. I could hear muffled sounds coming from some, like quiet cries and distant laughter. I hesitated, my pulse pounding in my ears. On a whim, I turned to my left and ventured to the first door. As I pushed it open, I was met with a small room bathed in a flickering light. In the center, an antique mirror hung on the wall. I approached it slowly, drawn by a strange compulsion. The frame was ornate, and as I looked closer, I realized the glass was warped. I reached out, heart pounding, and touched the surface. A surge of energy coursed through my fingertips, and the images in the mirror shifted. My reflection twisted and warped into the figure I had seen moments ago. It smiled back at me, and just as quickly, it vanished, leaving only darkness in the mirror's depths. Suddenly, the whispers surged, louder and more frantic. Find it now. They echoed around me, sending chill after chill down my spine. Fear gripped me as I backed away from the mirror, my mind spinning. This can't be happening, I muttered, trying to reason with myself. I turned and fled from the room, racing back into the hallway. But the hall stretched infinitely, twisting as I ran. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting. I could hear the whispers, louder now, urging me to stop. Here. Don't turn away. That's when I saw it, a glimmer of light further down the hall, shining brighter than the rest. I paused for a breath, my heart still racing as I took a tentative step toward it. The whispers escalated, wrenching at my mind. Find it. I was torn between fear and the undeniable curiosity that tugged at me. I could feel the pull of the light, and despite the terror lurking just beyond my sight, I knew I had to know what it was. Then a loud crash echoed behind me, and I spun around, heart in my throat. I wasn't alone. Something was coming. I took off toward the light, desperation fueling my escape, wondering not if I could find the truth, but if I could survive the darkness long enough to uncover it. I ran toward the light, urgency driving my every step. The whispers trailed behind me, their cacophony of voices blending into a haunting chant. Find it, find it, find it. It felt as though they wanted to pull me back, like ribbons of darkness that wanted to clutch me from behind. But I couldn't look back. As I neared the light, it became clearer. It wasn't just a flicker, it was a doorway aglow with warmth. I could barely believe it, perhaps this led back to the world I knew. I stepped through, heart racing, and found myself in a spacious room filled with strange objects that blinked and turned under the light. Gleaming bookshelves lined the walls, packed with ancient tomes covered in dust and cobwebs. In the center of the room stood a long table scattered with faded photographs and half-open journals. As I stepped further inside, the whispers faded, replaced by a silent, heavy atmosphere that enveloped me like a blanket. I moved cautiously around the table, studying the items. One photograph caught my eye, a group of people standing in front of a house that looked like the one described in the faded letters nearby. A chill ran down my spine as I recognized one of the faces. It was my own, younger and unfamiliar, smiling next to people I couldn't place. What is this? I whispered, bewildered. I flipped open a journal, its pages yellowed with age. The handwriting was elegant, yet it made me uneasy. The entries spoke of dreams and visions, of things found and things lost. Why am I here? I muttered to myself, scanning the text frantically. A chilling thought struck me. What if those whispers weren't just random sounds? What if they were fragments of memories lost in this twisted place? Then, a sharp noise jolted me from my thoughts. A door creaked open somewhere behind me. My heart thudded in my chest as I froze. I wasn't alone in this room anymore. I turned slowly, half expecting a sinister figure to emerge from the shadows. Instead, I found a small girl leaning against the doorframe, wide-eyed and pale. She looked as out of place as I felt. Her long hair hung in tangled waves, and she wore an old-fashioned dress that seemed to be part of another time. "Help me," she whispered, her voice cracking. Her gaze was filled with a mix of fear and desperation. "I'm trapped here." Fear gripped me anew. Who was she? What did she mean by trapped? Before I could respond, the atmosphere changed. The once welcoming light of the room flickered ominously. "Find it now." The whispers screamed in harmony, the urgency in their tone palpable. The girl took a step forward, her expression shifting from fear to urgency. "You have to find the key. It's the only way." Without thinking, I stepped toward her. "What key?" I asked, breathless. But her eyes widened, and she pointed toward the darkest corner of the room. That's when I saw it, a small box nestled in shadows, locked and waiting. The whispers surged again, rising in volume and desperation. "Find it. Find what you lost." My legs moved before I could process my thoughts, racing toward the box. My heart hammered in my chest as I reached for it, desperate to understand the connection to this girl and what awaited behind those walls of darkness. But before I could grasp the box, a shadow swooped in, blocking my path, and I froze, a new terror washing over me. Whatever it was, it wanted to stop me. The room pulsed with an unseen energy, and I knew I was running out of time. "Find it." The voices demanded once more, and as I stood paralyzed with fear, I realized my decision now could change everything. I took a step back, heart racing, my mind scrambling for clarity. Whatever loomed in front of me felt like a living shadow, swirling and shifting, its form obscured by the dim light. Panic surged through me. The girl's desperate eyes met mine, urging me to move. "You have to go," she shouted, her voice shaking. I darted to the side, away from the shadow. The box beckoned to me, a lifeline in a sea of confusion. I ignored the pulsating dread that wrapped around my chest. My focus sharpened. I needed to get that box. "Where is the key?" I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. The girl didn't answer. Instead, she moved closer to the shadow, her small frame trembling. "Don't!" I cried. But my words came too late. The shadow lunged, engulfing her in a darkness that seemed to swallow sound itself. My breath caught in my throat. She was gone, just like that. A gut-wrenching mix of anger and fear blazed in my chest. I rushed toward the box. It felt like it was calling me, compelling me to act. My fingers brushed against the cold surface. The whispers crescendoed, a choir of frantic voices spiraling around me. "Find it. Find what you lost." In a blur, I yanked the box open. Inside lay a single, tarnished key, catching the dim light. I grasped it, feeling its weight a tangible promise of escape. But relief was fleeting. I lifted my gaze to the shadow, now completely taking form. It morphed into something terrifying, a face forming in the darkness that seemed familiar yet warped, as if it were my own reflection twisted in a funhouse mirror. "Stop!" I shouted, my resolve wavering. I gripped the key tighter, feeling its jagged edges dig into my palm. I could hear the girl's cries echo in my mind, her fear mingling with my own. She had been trapped here, I couldn't let myself join her. Suddenly, the shadow surged forward, anger flashing in those distorted features. I stumbled back, instinctively raising the key like a weapon. "Get away from me!" I yelled, and as I did, the key shimmered in my grip, the light refracting off its surface. In that moment, I remembered the journal's message about a key. Maybe it wasn't just about locking and unlocking physical things. Maybe it was about unlocking memories, truths that were shrouded in darkness. Before I could think twice, I thrust the key forward, aiming it at the shadow. "Let her go!" I shouted. The shadow halted, as if my words had taken effect. Then it hesitated and shrank away slightly. My heart raced at the sight. The whispers surged around me again, the voices rising in anticipation. "Find it, become free," they chanted, urgency dripping from each word. But then I felt a gust of air swirling around me as the walls of the room began to close in. I wasn't safe yet, something else was coming. A new dark presence. I quickly stashed the key in my pocket, feeling its jagged edges against my skin, as I turned toward the door, my instincts screaming at me to escape. Shadows danced at the corner of my vision. Is there another way out? I mumbled to myself, scanning the room one last time. I had to decide quickly. Behind me, the murmur of the whispers turned to a roar. I could feel the weight of time pressing down on me. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the other side of the room, and my heart dropped. I whipped around to see the contents of the table scattering, a storm of old papers and fragile photographs flying through the air. The shadow was no longer my only concern. I took a deep breath, understanding that whatever lay ahead could be worse than what I faced now. The urgency intensified as I faced the door, my next move crucial. I had to act fast. Would I find a way out, or would this room swallow me whole? I stood frozen, heart racing, torn between fear and a desperate hope for escape. The shadow loomed behind me, its form shifting in the flickering light, taunting me while the whispers crescendoed in a chaotic chorus. I turned back to the door, my grip tightening around the tarnished key still buried in my pocket. "Find it," the whispers echoed, urging me forward. With a resolve I didn't fully feel, I sprinted to the door at the far end of the room, the pounding of my heart matched only by the shouts swelling in the whispers behind me. I could feel the temperature drop, the air thickening with malevolence as I approached the door. Each step felt heavier, like the shadows were reaching out, trying to pull me back. I reached the door and pushed against it. It swung open with a creak, revealing another hallway, but this one was dimly lit, stretching into the unknown. My instincts screamed at me not to look back. I dashed through the opening, the shadows shrieking in protest behind me. I ran down the hall, the whispers now sounding more frantic, echoing off the walls. "You can't hide. You belong to us. I didn't stop to think, I just put one foot in front of the other, heart pounding furiously. I had to find a way out of this madness. Suddenly, the ground beneath me shifted, and with a surprise that knotted my stomach, I stumbled into an expansive room filled with familiar odds and ends. My memories played like a twisted slideshow, old photographs, familiar knickknacks, and even an easel with a partially painted canvas. It looked like fragments of my life had been scattered everywhere, as though a violent wind had torn through my reality and laid it bare for me to witness. In the very center of the room, illuminated by a stray beam of light, stood that same mirror, taunting, mocking. I had seen it before, in the previous room. It beckoned to me once again. The surface shimmered with indistinct shape shifting, and within it, I could see now not just my reflection, but everyone I had lost, poverty and abundance standing hand in hand, a cacophony of my regrets twisting into misery. The whispers grew louder. Face it. Embrace it. Only then can you find it. I felt myself pulled toward the mirror, as if it were a portal to some forgotten place, an inescapable lure I couldn't resist. Whether it was bravery, madness, or something else entirely, I lifted a hesitant hand and pressed it against the glass. I was drawn into a maelstrom of swirling color, consumed by a sensation that felt like both drowning and awakening. I gasped, feeling memories flood back. Visions from my past crashed over me, moments of failure, moments of joy, and beneath them all, the shadows, the dark threads that had woven through my history, pulling me down. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through my hand. The key. I dug it out of my pocket, tangled up in confusion, a bright glimmer against the dark. The moment it touched the mirror's surface, it burst into light, the darkness fracturing before it like glass shattering under pressure. And then I fell. I landed hard on cold, damp ground, the sudden impact knocking the breath from my lungs. I opened my eyes to chaotic darkness but felt different, less encumbered. I scrambled to my feet, breathing heavily as I scanned my surroundings. A low fog seeped through the air, laying heavy on my skin. The silhouette of a street lamp flickered nearby, illuminating an alley that looked hauntingly familiar. Had I escaped? I bolted toward the light, the whispers dying down into soft echoes, a residual hum of the chaos I had left behind. As I emerged onto the street, disoriented, I noticed the rain had ceased, leaving only a thick mist. The world was silent, too silent. Even the shadows cast by the street lamps seemed to hold their breath. I looked around, half expecting to see that haunting reflection of myself, that tether to the darkness I had encountered. But there was nothing. The street was empty, untouched, as if the chaos had never existed. I stumbled back against a lamppost, holding my head in my hands, trying to make sense of it all. Had anything truly happened? Was it a nightmare, a figment of my broken mind? And yet, I could still feel the weight of that hollow choice hanging over me, of who I might have lost inside that darkness. I glanced back to where I had come from, but the shadows had melted away, leaving only silence. I didn't know if I would ever truly escape, or if the darkness was just waiting, hidden in the corners of my mind. I turned, taking a deep breath, knowing more questions lingered than answers. I took a step away. All I could do now was start over, carrying the weight of what had come before with me. Returning to my apartment was a choice I hesitated to make, but I knew, deep down, I would eventually have to face whatever it was I had left behind. I moved forward, wondering which whispers I would choose to listen to next.